Here's what's going on, guys. We're going to do a reaction to a TalkativeTri video he recently made. Actually, a really awesome video idea that he came up with, since he's part of the community, and there's a lot of us content creators, big and small. But there's a common thread between everybody here in this video, and that is we all at least like Path of Exile 2. Or at least have, hope for it to be really good. This was just a great litmus test for where the overall community's mind is, and there were a lot of different kind of answers. And it's not even just like, oh, here's a bunch of different things the game needs. No, it's like every single person got to say what is their number one priority. And I just want to actually give my thoughts out there and digest what was said and see if I am more or less in alignment with where everybody is on the feelings of the game, or if I'm completely out of line.
I reached out to a variety of my friends and fellow content creators, as well as the TalkativeTri community on YouTube, asking them all, what does PoE2 need right now?
Path of Exile 2 needs skill balance, and lots of it if necessary. I don't want to see another patch 0.2 where, 50 or 60% of players are playing the exact same build, the same ascendancy, the same skill. If something is overtuned, it needs to be nerfed, even if it's mid-league.
Alright, so skill balance at the top of the list for Dreamcore. Very smart dude, always comes out with amazing tech videos. One component of my videos, so I have huge respect for him. Balance was actually, ironically, the antithesis of what I mentioned in my response later. But I think interestingly, there's like a connection between what he and I were going for. I basically say later on that I think they should focus less on balance and more on creativity, just getting stuff out there. Yeah, so he's on board with late game nerfs. I'm on board with later nerfs after the league, but GGG made the decision early on that they're never going to do that after the infamous Comet metagym nerf. But yeah, I mean, if they're not going to nerf anything later on, then I don't want them to care about balance. So I actually kind of disagree with Dreamcore here. If they're going to care about balance a whole lot early on, that's not going to work, because that's just going to delay the early access monumentally. If they're not going to get the axe done, if they got to keep reverting all these resources to, let's make sure the game is as balanced as possible, so when it releases, there's no crazy overpowered build. Well, they kind of tried to do that with 0.2, and guess what? We got Lightning Spear. Same thing to happen in 0.3. It's not going to be Lightning Spear, it'll be something different. So I personally would rather them not focus on balance unless they're going to do what he said, Dreamcore said there, and actually nerf things mid-league. So I'm, in one sense, very much on board with what he just said. On the other sense, in the current state of things, with GGG's decision, not on board with it.
More interesting choices, such as more skills you would realistically use in an endgame scenario. Less hurdles to use those choices, such as less stat requirements and less level requirements. And an endgame with a clear identity. Currently PoE2 endgame is very much PoE1 without the tooling of PoE1. You're slow, and there's not enough surprises, and there's not enough interesting content. So that needs to become more clear and more interesting.
Yeah, okay, so Neversting seems like a pretty fine take. I think almost everybody agrees that PoE2 0.2 especially was just kind of vanilla, not a whole lot going on there. And yeah, they tried to make towers a little more interesting. They tried to give what they gave us a few more Atlas passive points. They changed a few things. I love the Citadel system. I feel like that's a really nicely developed system, at least at its core. Maybe it's not in its final state, but looks pretty good. At least conceptually, the Citadel system into the Arbiter fight, and how do you explore those things, and even using the towers to like leapfrog and get to do Citadels, repeat them through different, precursors, specialized precursor stuff. Whether you're at like a low-end level or a high-end level, that you can feel like a real progression in that particular farm. But that's just one specific farm. It's like the one thing that's like super new in this game. Other than that, it does feel like PoE2 has PoE1's identity, just less of it. And yeah, I feel like I'm probably kind of on board with what Neversink said. Yeah, the systems feel half-baked. They just do. And so we just need these things to come out faster, basically.
So what does Path of Exile 2 need the most right now? I think it's got to be build variety. They got to make sure that every single skill that is a main skill candidate is actually worth playing from like early levels all the way into the end game. Right now, that is not the case. I would really love for them to go back and like rebalance all of that, which I know they say they want to do, but do it right this time. Come on.
Swinging makes a really good point there. The unfortunate thing is this is like a utopian requirement or utopian ask point. I've never seen an ARPG that has every single skill or potential way to play as being perfectly balanced. Certainly not one with a whole bunch of different options like Path of Exile 1 or 2 for that matter. There's always good skills, there's always bad skills. The meta constantly shift, and there's probably no way to make every single build equally viable. That's just not a thing. And even if that is the case, the players will choose a meta and they'll pump it up real big. Some content creator or multiple content creators will make videos on one particular build, and then others will follow suit, and then suddenly it'll be like the most popular. And yeah, there's some variance in terms of like, you check the PoE Ninja websites to see, is this the best or the worst league ever for build diversity or something. But it is something that it's like the kind of thing that you put on a pedestal and you're always striving for it, right? I mean, you can never go wrong asking for that. It's just the expectation. I would just suggest to people not have super high expectations on that. Finish the game first. I would say finish the game first, come out with all the core systems, and then worry about that sort of thing.
If you had to ask me what Path of Exile 2 needs right now, right in this moment, without a doubt, there are two things that come to mind. First and foremost, we absolutely positively need Blight. Hands down, Path of Exile 2 engine plus Blight, absolutely sign me up. The second thing, unfortunately, we really desperately need some sort of auction house system or a way to buy items offline. The biggest flaw in Path of Exile is sometimes I can't buy that item that was listed 32 days ago by that guy that's not logging in.
All right, well, those two things were definitely not on my radar at all. This is one of those cases where I don't really have anything against what he's saying, but they're just, both of those things are very much on the very low end of my totem pole. I actually don't want to see GG just ham-fist PoE1 mechanics into PoE2 like they seem to have been doing. I'm not going to sit here and try to debate anyone on whether Blight fits more into the theme of the PoE2 and its engine capacity and its I don't know, the gameplay themes of it or whatever, more so or less so than other mechanics. I would like there to be a limit in how many shoehorned PoE1 mechanics they bring in. I feel like the limit is already just hit its max. So I'm not going to be invigorated if they just add Blight into PoE2 and that's it. And as far as the auction house thing, again, not high on my radar list. I appreciate the auction house. I appreciate Faustus. I don't really have a positive or negative view on this. I'd be curious to hear you guys' opinions on, like, to what extent do you think there should be, like, the full-blown, real, absolute, full-fledged auction house, online, offline auction house. Maybe you don't even have to, like, communicate with the person to buy things. You can buy them offline, like you said, like 32 days later or whatever. Sounds kind of nice, but I don't know. I'm sure Chris Wilson would have something bad to say about it, but he's not here anymore, so I guess we don't have to worry about that. Don't have to worry about feeling the weight of things anymore.
So I was asked what's the most important thing for GGG to get right in 030. I reckon it is getting the gearing process, start and middle, to feel noticeably different to 010, but also to feel good. Now, I don't think they've got it in a bad spot as of 020H, but that was way too late to save Dawn of the Hunt. So hopefully they get that gearing process right, and the best thing Grinding Gear Games can do to get that right is to be testing the process of leveling characters from start to finish. Not just testing individual acts, but doing the whole playthroughs.
Wow, that's a pretty interesting take. Okay, so I feel like I have a couple different angles on that one. One, I am all for GGG doing a better job testing things full blown, not just building a microcosm of, a scenario like, oh, let's test this build in Act 3, level 30 or whatever, and now let's test it in level 60. I like the idea of the devs actually playing the game, like start to finish, and getting a feel for builds. I mean, you and I both know they don't have enough time to do all that full blown. Like, they got other things they got to be doing, and so again, that once again speaks to how much time should we put into balancing things. So this is a balancing argument that Surgog is making about the leveling aspect of the game. And the other side of what I will say on it is, I have a hard time responding to this and not being like elitist about it, but like, there's PoE1 leagues in history that people complained a lot about with leveling early on. I especially think like the Arch Nemesis days when people were like, honestly, were like whining like crazy about how hard it was to level. Didn't bother me very much. I don't think it's because I picked a miraculously good leveling skill, whatever. I got my butt handed to me just like everyone else in 0.1 and the beginning of 0.2, but I liked it. I thought that's what we were going for. I mean, I thought, especially in PoE2, it was supposed to be more grueling, harder, and more demanding, and cater to casuals less. And I think Sorgog's trying to make an argument for a more well-rounded appeal to the masses. Try to appeal to the hardcore gamer, but also like to the masses. Try to balance as best you can. I feel like at a certain point, you kind of got to choose. You got to pick your poison. Either you're going to make the game oriented towards appealing to a wider audience, make that leveling process kind of easy, regardless of whether or not you're good at the game and really good at getting gear, and regardless of whether or not you think you should be grinding the same zone more than once. Heaven forbid that idea. It's an idea I threw around before. Could it be possible that it would be okay to have a world where you might need to grind a zone in a campaign in order to progress more easily through? Such a thing would probably be unforgivable to a lot of people, but I remember doing that in the Diablo series early on, and that feeling normal. I don't know. I thought we were moving a little bit more towards that, which is more demanding and the kind of thing where only a really top-notch player who knows what they're doing, has great technical skill, and good at gearing through the campaign would basically breeze through it. Everyone else would have a harder time. That's what I thought we were kind of going for, and maybe it is, maybe it's not. But the recent move, like Sorgog mentioned there, that we made it kind of easier with the patch, whatever it was, 0.2H, I think he said. I don't know. I didn't level another character later, so I don't know how much easier it is. I didn't have much of a problem in 0.2 initially because I went Twister. And it was bugged, but I was playing it in a non-bugged fashion for most of the campaign, so I wasn't even taking advantage of it, ironically. It worked so well because it was a technically great skill combo setup that was part of Twister, Whirling Slash and Twister. It's really good all-around build, great for leveling, and a lot of people who level with it breeze through it whether they took advantage of the bugs on it or not. And I think that was just a reward for doing a more technical style gameplay that required more than a couple buttons to execute well. I thought it was good. I thought it was a good thing, the way all that was set up. I really enjoyed, testing a few different things. Oh, we're going to play the most convoluted version of the build. Oh, wait, it's actually the best one. That seems fitting to me. If the more buttons you press, the more you build combos things in, the stronger the build is supposed to be if you do that a little bit of extra work. So I don't know what we're going for here. Obviously, I lean a little more towards let's make the game a little bit more punishing and rewarding for those who are more technically adept and willing to press more buttons and build decent builds. And let's make it more challenging for those who are maybe newer. And, if that turns some people off, that's a small price to pay for making a game that caters to a specific audience, which is what I thought Path of Exile was exactly meant to do in the ARPG space. When am I planning the league start? I don't know yet. Twister, if nothing else. It's damn good. I'm going to make some more videos on it before release. We'll see.
Hey everybody, Blaze here. I think that PoE2 needs more items, specifically more build-enabling uniques and socketables. If Diablo 2 has taught me anything, it's that the loot aspect of an ARPG is so crucial, and that's one of the reasons why I've been going back to Diablo 2 for 20 years now. Can't wait to see what I'm picking up in 0.3. Peace.
Well, this take from Blaze is the one I agree with the most so far, I'd say. Yeah, more new items. That's what I'm arguing for. I'm arguing for less focus on balance overall and more focus on the creative aspect of it. Give us more tools. Give us more passives. Reintegrate the passive tree better. Give us more jewels. Give us more weapons. Bring in the new weapon archetypes that we don't have yet, for God's sake. Give us more uniques. Give us more build enabling things. Socketables. I mean, I feel like they've already gone kind of off the deep end on that. They've given us a whole bunch of socketables in 0.2. Yeah, 0.1 was kind of weak on the socketables, but now we got a lot of different options. And maybe we could have more. Great. But totally on board with what he said. More stuff, more cool things to play around with, more broken builds. The more stuff you give us, the harder it is to balance. Just put that whole balance thing in the back seat. Give us more cool stuff. It'll distract us from otherwise getting bored with the game or being concerned with balance if you just give us more. The game so far from being finished, it's ridiculous. I mean, so many unpolished aspects of it, including especially like where are swords? Where are swords in the game? It's in the passive tree. It's not even in the game. If you ever wanted evidence that the game is not even close to finished, there you go. So yeah, give us more stuff. Complete the game. Give us the archetype. Give us uniques. On board with it.
I have about 15,000 hours in PoE2. Love the game. Really think there's only one thing me and probably everyone else in the community really wishes they were to add, and that's a cookbook. I mean, you see what it did for Diablo 4? This could bring PoE2 to the next level. One thing I'm sure millions of gamers would love is if this game came out for Mac. I mean, you're really missing out on a huge market share. Have you thought about adding powers?
Yeah, I'm not sure what that was all about. Apparently that was like an inside joke. I don't even know what a cookbook is. Apparently it's something about Diablo. I think it was just like a meme answer. No comment.
I imagine that you're going to get a lot of different answers to this question, and that is because PoE2 honestly needs a lot. And that is because it is an unfinished early access product, and people tend to forget that, just because of how polished and clean it looks at times. What the game needs most, though, is to stop being treated like it's finished and start getting updated more frequently. There are so many problems with skills and systems that could be adjusted on a more frequent basis that would keep us playing long term.
That's easily the best take I've heard so far from him there. Honestly, I probably should have said that in my answer. Probably the biggest, most frustrating thing is the fact that this is not a finished game. And if they would just finish it faster, it would make everybody happier. This is in part why I give the answer I do later on about let's worry about balance less and worry about more new stuff, the creative side. It's just that he's taking more focus on, it's not even about like getting new items or new creative thing. It's about just finishing the damn game. Like just finish the game. Get the axe done, get the classes done, get the swords in, make stuff nice and polished like it is in terms of its sound design and visuals and things. Actually bring the systems online to the fullest ability, and then you know what, maybe focus on like a whole bunch of build diversity stuff and balance and things like that. That would be nice. I do think that is probably the smartest thing that they could do. They put themselves in between a rock and a hard place, though, when they were talking about PoE2 so long ago that they kept talking about it, and then it was losing steam. They're like, all right, well, we're going to have to do something. Let's just do an early release, early access, even though we're nowhere near finished. And then, you guys remember, we had a huge delay, right? We had like ExileCon 2, and then there was like another big delay, and they finally come out with it, and then they're like, we're going to charge you money for this early access. And then because we charge you money, probably, we're going to try to treat this like it's a finished game. And then that's going to make it even take longer to finish the game. Because if we treat it like a finished game, then we have to worry about balancing everything and trying to, come out with a legit schedule stuff. And we'll see how that works. And then PoE1 suffered massively on its schedule because of it. And it's just all chaos and terrible time management scheduling. And they're basically focusing on all the wrong things while the game is just not done, not even close, and who knows whenever it's actually gonna be done. Supposedly, in some alternate universe, this game gets done before the end of the year. Yeah, right. So yeah, 100% agree with what he's saying, and I think it's probably even more insightful than my answer.
Hey guys, Miso here. So to answer the question of what Path of Exile 2 needs right now is definitely a difficult one. I think that there's a lot of answers for it, but definitely one of them has to be a more rewarding mapping experience. I think right now mapping is very simple. You go from tier 1 to tier 15 fairly quickly, and tier 16s aren't that much of a difference. The difficulty levels of these maps don't really scale that high, and as a result, it's never that challenging to do. And also, the challenge does not mean reward. So even if you make maps more challenging, right now, rewards aren't increased. So I'd love to see there to be a higher tier of maps that can actually be challenging, like in Path of Exile 1, and make it so that the more challenging the maps are, the more rewards that you get. That way it can actually be rewarding to run these maps as opposed to just going and putting on rarity gear and farming breaches and having high density.
Yeah, that's a fascinating take. I'm not sure I would have worded this point the same way. I wonder if he just like forgot to mention tower system in there, or that just isn't actually part of the qualms that he has. I would expect most people to be complaining about the towers in this situation, because you can level up your maps. You can actually make them a lot more rewarding and scale up the progression through the tower system. Obviously, if you load up like 12 precursors onto a single map, you're going to have a really juicy map. It's going to do a lot of different things. A lot of people voice opinions that they don't like that. In fact, I think this entire video is void of anyone complaining about towers, ironically. So it's kind of a good idea that I bring it up here. But I feel like Miso was maybe either neglected that point, or that isn't exactly what he was referring to. He did make a really good point about, at least in the most recent edition of the game, you go from tier 1 to 15 like at the snap of a finger, which is kind of cool in a sense, but I mean, it just cheapens the progression beyond a campaign. The campaign, I know a lot of people complain about the campaign being a bit of a slog, and then suddenly, boom, you're just right there to tier 15. That's so bizarre. And then like your gear isn't really ready for it, but there's just not a very linear progression there that kind of helps you gear up through the process. It's just like you just exponentially shot up to the end if you can somehow make it there, and then you're like banging your head against the wall trying not to die on tier 15s because they are harder. And then I think what he was also saying is, well, what's the point of doing tier 15? Because you can just do lower tier maps and maybe it's still halfway good. I can't really speak to that. I didn't really test lower tier maps in 0.1 or 0.2. I always just tried to do tier 15. I don't know, but to me, towers is probably more to the point that people want to hear about.
Hello everybody, hello Try, it's me, Farum, and we are here with a quick comment about what I think needs to change in Path of Exile 2. I think they need a way to dump currency. I think inflation is the biggest problem with their league mechanic right now. They're going to be adding features to the endgame, right? There's going to be more maps, there's going to be more bosses. These things are going to be coming over time in the form of league mechanics. But there's no way to dump that early currency. Exalt to divine ratios go crazy, and that is a surefire way to lose all of your casual, semi-casual audience who might have to take a weekend away, that FOMO of not being able to keep up with a rapidly inflating market. I think it drives the players away, it drives them away fast, and I think we've got two very clear indications of that happening over 0.1 and 0.2, where you see the drop-off just like a slide, just off SteamDB, just wherever the player's gone. So yeah, I think they need to add some way to dump that currency, probably in the form of a crafting bench, some deterministic crafting, bring crafting out for people, and actually let people customize their gear, get their characters ready for what they're trying to do, and at the same time stop inflation. I think that would be the biggest change that could come in 0.3.
Farham brings up a very interesting point. I'm so glad he brought this point up, or that this topic gets brought up. The only issue with his point is I feel like it's addressing the symptom, not the cause. He does touch on it as a potential solution with the crafting bench. As you all know, with like the meta crafting and whatever in PoE1 helps pull currencies out. My issue with this take of his is that it's, again, I think it does seem to be a bit of a problem on the surface. Yeah, it might drive some people who don't want to do the grind out because they're just seeing a runaway train on their currency depreciating in value. I don't know if I can put much of an onus on GGG to try to anticipate what's going to happen in the market for a brand new game like this. I feel like it's a little bit unfair to criticize GGG for this. I don't really expect them to necessarily have the foresight to know exactly how to balance currency and stuff, especially when the crafting system's so half-baked already. And do they even really know what they want the crafting system to be like? Again, we'll talk about that more later. I know they're Locahall and some others address that. But yeah, to me, it's more of a symptom versus a cause, and I don't really see this as a huge problem or something that can even be addressed up front. I would rather them focus on different things, and maybe some of the player base takes a bit of a hit until it figures some of the other, in my opinion, more important things out. And then we can worry about more about, okay, let's fix the currency situation once we get the game finished in other ways, once we get crafting figured out where we want to be, and then we can kind of see what we need to do with currency sinks and stuff. I have faith that they're going to solve that in the end, but again, early stages of early access in a game that's not progressing very quickly, it is what it is.
2 needs 3 things right now. First is more content, which will bring more ways to specialize our builds in and more ways to craft gear. Second is a currency sink for Trade League, something that consumes divines and other currencies and stops divines just skyrocketing endlessly. And third, for more skills to be viable, ignoring broken skills for a moment. Too many skills are either a clunky or a combo that just doesn't feel good to do in endgame or does zero damage at all. I love build experimentation in Path of Exile 2, but a lot of skills just feel too weak.
Okay, Cyclone cheated. He put 3 things on the list, not 1. But no, anyway, revisiting the currency sync issue. Okay, we just talked about that, and that's fine. No other major comments on it. He did tap into the crafting issue, which is kind of a new thing. Yeah, it's going to be. I think I'll save my comments on that later as well, because there's more deliberate conversation on crafting comes later on. And what else did he say? Oh yeah, skill balance. Again, something we kind of addressed already. The useless skills. I see this be a big complaint. I guess I'll kind of comment on it again. I've seen this be a big complaint about the game. I just don't see. I don't. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me for them to focus really heavy on trying to make poor skills better, other than just like broad scale buffs to them. I feel like if the devs are putting in a bunch of time to try and like make the weaker skills, buff the numbers, and give them more synergies and stuff, that is a good idea, but I mean, it is indirectly time taken away from. If it fulfills the balance quota more than it does the hey, give us new stuff quota. Like the game exists there. Yeah, if they create new synergies out of it, then that is one thing. But you know, the skill already exists. If it sucks, I mean, we hope one day it's going to be good, but I'm not really expecting every single skill to be super viable. Even in a perfect world, or in the best case scenario, I don't expect that. I definitely don't expect it in early access when I think they should be focusing on other things, you know, which my mind has been somewhat changed through listening to some of these content creators. Maybe part of me thinks, okay, let's focus on just giving people more stuff, and we'll just throw mud on the wall and see what sticks. Or let's actually treat this like early access and just get with the program, constant releases. Don't worry about the schedule thing so much. Stop trying to treat this like it's a finished game, which is, said earlier.
What does PoE2 need right now? I'd have to say more dopamine in the endgame, and implementing all 6 acts because Cruel's getting pretty old. Also, I'm as stoked as the next Exile for Druid to be released, but Assassin and Traps are what I'm most looking forward to.
Okay, the whole like traps and assassin thing, that's about, I feel about the same way about that I do about Blight from Traffic, wanting Blight, but anyway, He said something really interesting there in the middle about the dopamine thing. Okay, so more massive dopamine hits. Of course, I'm interested in more dopamine hits. Let's give us some more exciting loot. I did drop that Onslaught Trinket, which was worth a lot in a map that was pretty big. Rice-Lathus Coil, I dropped that last week, which was pretty big. I dropped Headhunter last time, that was kind of big at the time. And did not drop a mirror in the game, but that would have been huge if it did. The Divine Orbs, they hit a little bit, but... yeah, the game, I remember, received a loot makeover, which helped a little, but to me, the fewer dopamine hits you have, the more impactful they are when they do happen. So I see it a little bit as a zero-sum game, if you will. Like, if you go into a map and you drop tons and tons and tons of stuff, it becomes less exciting with each map that you do. Versus if you rarely ever drop anything, it becomes absolutely huge deal when you drop even the smallest thing, right? So I don't really see that personally as a huge deal. That's how I've always felt about loot. There's poverty leagues, there's abundance leagues, and to me, there's not a huge difference between the two. Anyway, hopefully you guys kind of understand where I'm coming from.
What does Path of Exile 2 need right now? Crafting. Low-end items are found on the ground. Super high-end items are crafted with materials that the average player can't afford, leaving a colossal gap in the mid-game.
All right, I feel like this might actually be the most contentious topic of all, even more so than towers, is the crafting system. I see this huge divide in the player base about, what should be crafting. Not even necessarily a divide, but just a lot of people clamoring for PoE1-esque crafting. I would remind all of you that PoE2 doesn't necessarily need to be just like PoE1 in a variety of ways, whether we're talking league mechanics, juicing, or crafting. It could very well be a different game where, for example, maybe the majority of the loot you have, even in the end game, start, middle, and end, actually just dropped. And maybe you exalt slam it the rest of the way, and that's about all there is to it. I was kind of getting the impression that's the way the game was played, except at the very, very, very top end, when you're trying to like somehow make mirror tier gear with omens and stuff. Which, yeah, they seem kind of weird. Definitely something is reserved for the bourgeoisie, for sure. To me, it would make more sense for the game to not actually have any omens than for it to be in its current state with the omen current rarity and to have omens. So I wonder what you guys would think about, like, imagine if the game just didn't even have omens. And then you really would be relegated more towards just picking the items off the ground. But this brings me up to my next point. We did have a pivotal moment in 0.2G, I think it was, where they gave us a dramatic buff to tiered rares that dropped on the ground. Tiered rares, you ID them and they're like phenomenally good. Okay, I ID'd a tiered rare that was insanely good. ES chest was almost perfect when I ID'd it. And that's very exciting. That's actually a huge dope. It was honestly the biggest dopamine hit of the entire league, was a tiered rare body armor, vile body armor, ES chest or whatever, best base, best rolls, everything. It was like one affix short of being amazing, suffix wise. And I'm all for a game being set up that way, where it's like, okay, you drop the item, it's like 80% finished, and maybe you craft on it, maybe not. You just slam it and be like, oh, okay, it's still an amazing item. So it's not perfect, but it's amazing. I'm actually pretty biased in favor of having an ARPG be more drop oriented. Where are you getting your gear? Are you getting it from drops or are you getting it from crafts? And where is that? Where is the weighting on that, right? I'm definitely in favor of a game where well over 50% of the quality of the gear that you have is due to drops. Maybe there's a blended component of it, but dropping the item it's a lot more than just dropping a white base on the ground, is what I'm saying. I'm totally down for that. I think a lot of people disagree, but that's where I'm at.
So, what does Path of Exile 2 need right now? There's a long list. We could talk about that for a while, but I think the most important thing right now for PoE2 is either just raw movement speed, because we literally don't have enough. I feel like I've got concrete shoes on all the time. Or the second thing, which is that I think in the history of PoE2 so far, I have seen 2 builds total that didn't feel like they were designed in-house at GGG before we ever got access to it. There is no build creativity available. We have a very limited set of tools that only work together with the tools that were designed by GGG to work together. So whether you've come up with a build or not, you haven't come up with a build. You're just figuring out the pieces of the build that were already formed before we even got the patch. What we need the most is the ability to actually create things and be interesting, because PoE1 is drowning in that. And it always has, and that's one of my favorite things about PoE1, and it appears to be completely missing from PoE2 right now.
Yeah, I love how Balor Mage's green screen is so overpowered, it bricked my own green screen. He somehow bricked my green screen through his own. That's insane. It's because I have like automatic lighting in here, and somehow it got... Yeah, that's insane. Balor, you fouled my camera. How dare you? All right, well, it's fixed now. But anyway, truth be told, he made some very interesting points. Two major points there about just overall movement or pacing, like movement speed, and then also about a lack of actual build creativity and more just focus on like following the lines of how builds are just naturally set up because the developers basically solved the puzzles for you, and you're just there to, they basically handing you the pieces and you just put the pieces of the puzzle in and figure it out. Like the Twister build, right? I mean, Whirling Slash literally says this will make, a Twister projectile shoot extra projectiles per Whirling Slash, up to 3. I mean, obviously, I'm not a freaking genius when I figure out, hey, I should run Twister with Whirling Slash, and then it's like 4 times more powerful. And then if it's elemental ground passing, so, well, maybe I can cast a Frostbolt, make a chilled ground, then my twisters are all on the chilled ground. Obviously, I'm just putting the puzzles together that were already there. So I think he's onto something there. Yeah, and people have commented, I think a decent solution to this is, I don't know how I feel about this really, but what if, for example, we remove the shackles of weapon archetypes being enforced with that? Like, what if I could flicker strike with a spear? That would be pretty cool. I can already think of some really cool things I could do with that if I didn't have to use a freaking quarterstaff just to flicker strike. Or what if I could cast Twister with a quarterstaff? What if Whirling Slash and Whirling Blast or whatever they are, like two different archetypes, what if they work together in somehow synergistic way? I don't know. It would require some more programming on their part. But yeah, I feel like they're playing it a little bit safe with this stuff. I'm not terribly opposed to it right now when it's early access. I'm not gonna fault GGG massively for like trying to somehow hem in, like anticipate balance things by enforcing these archetypes, and you know, you got to stay in the lane of whatever weapon archetype you're using and stuff. And that makes it easier for them to develop the game because they don't have to worry about, they don't have to try to somehow anticipate all the insane weird combos you could do. But I'm actually on the side of, let's just throw it all out the window and let's have those insane combos. And if something turns out to be 10 times more powerful than anything else, well, kudos to the person who came up with it, because at least it was a creative idea. And a lot of people are going to love it in the time being. And then you can, you know, maybe nerf it mid-league. Oh my God, heaven forbid. But, you know, that's not the approach they're taking. So I think I totally understand where Balor Mage is coming from. I don't think there's a really good solution for this other than for them to have already taken a different approach with nerfing things mid-league, and for them to stop playing it safe in the terms of the balance. So yeah, I'm more or less on board with what he's saying. Interesting point that he brings out. Very good point.
Crafting. We need a clearer idea of what the purpose of crafting is in Path of Exile 2. Currently, it feels like the system isn't new or innovative, but rather a partial rendition of the existing systems we had in PoE1. Blindly stripping back doesn't always mean innovation. A car with 3 wheels is just a broken car, but a motorbike with 2 wheels serves a new purpose that can do different things. It feels like we just have a car with 3 wheels right now. If the goal is to make ground loot matter more, make ground loot matter more. Don't make crafting worse. And if there was a clear idea for a place and function for crafting in PoE2, please let us know soon, because currently it just feels like we have a token system in the game that the devs don't want to be there, but added it just to make people happy and say that the game has a functional crafting system.
All right. Yeah, I think Locahol really hit the nail on the head with the crafting more than anybody else. And I think it'd be really interesting if he and I were to talk about this kind of debate on what crafting should be, because we have pretty different takes on this. But I think what he worded here is very, very well worded, and there's not much I can strip out of here and say, no, he's wrong about this. No, it's absolutely right. I mean, he's basically just saying crafting in PoE2 has an identity crisis, and we don't really know exactly, you know, how you're supposed to get gear. I mean, obviously, like, uniques are straightforward. You gear, maybe you valid, you know, or divine it or something. And then there's the tiered system, which is pretty good. It feels like there's a decent identity on like drop only loot, and you don't really do anything to it. But when it comes to crafting, to whatever extent, whether it's like finishing an item early, I guess like early on, crafting seems like its identity is pretty well solid. Maybe you know, augment it regal and exalt it, and that feels kind of okay. But like especially mid league or late league, with like the omens and how exorbitantly priced they are, how rare they are. Yeah, it honestly feels like it's just some sort of stripped down version of PoE1 crafting, where it's like they haven't really figured out if they want crafting to be a major part of how you get loot or to be a very minor part. And the fact that, I mentioned this earlier, the fact that omens exist is kind of weird with how restrictive crafting is already. The Omen of Whittling is like the most powerful crafting tool in the entire game, both in PoE1 and PoE2. It's so weird. Like, why is it like that? I agree. I think we should have a better, clearer picture about what's going on. They just haven't put much time and effort into it, and I guess they wanted to somehow give the spirit of PoE1 and PoE2 with the crafting system, and it was pretty poorly implemented, I gotta say. Yeah.
The question was asked, what do I think PoE2 needs right now? And my answer is, at least when I play all these other isometric action RPGs, then I play PoE1, PoE2, the first thing I notice is lack of quality of life. Now, obviously, there's a lot of other things that I wish the game had, but what I would love to see is a big overhaul on that front. You have to individually pick up each item. You don't have a sort button on your inventory. You don't have hybrid controller support with mouse and keyboard. You don't have a trade house. You need a ton of third-party tools. What I would love to see is a complete overhaul for quality of life.
That's pretty cool. It's one of the cool things about getting a take from somebody else who's not deeply ensconced with the PoE1 environment. So it's not really something I would think about. Having, played Last Epoch and D4, D3 and all that, I absolutely see where he's coming from. Like Last Epoch, the sort tool. I mean, fortunately, he gave a few good examples of quality of life. I wasn't sure initially what he was going to be referring to. It's like quality of life is this nebulous thing, and we need more of it, better. Auction house, we saw that mentioned earlier. I guess that is something people would like. I feel like that's maybe not something PoE veterans are clamoring for so much as just enjoyers of the ARPG genre in general who are coming over to PoE2 are kind of looking at the fact that there's no auction house and be like, what? Why? 2025? What? And maybe that's based enough. Just, it's 2025. We don't have an auction house. Should we have one? I don't know. Well, that was actually a pretty awesome video. Like I said, that's a lot of different takes from different players and some of the community members, and even a little bit on TalkativeTri himself. And I really appreciated all those different takes, and it's great to go over stuff like this. It's not really thought that much about what other people like, but we've had a few months and a couple of major patch launches to kind of digest how the community feels in the game, and I think they hit most of the marks on there. Yeah, I think we can all kind of appreciate everybody's take, and there's at least something that you could probably take away from this video, whether it's my comments or my response and reactions to some of the other content creators, or just their take in general. If it's like, if you thought somebody else's take was unfathomably based, that's good. Get some value out of the video.